may know Mariah Lyttle from her social media accounts, where she's gone viral more than a few times for her amazing singing voice.
Hey, Mr. Einstein, here I am.
You remind me of a girl
That I want to know.
See your face whenever
I look at you.
wouldn't believe all of the things
And she put me through.
that is why
I just can't get with you.
But there's more to this talented woman. Mariah Lyttle is a Jamaican American singer, actress, and artist. Originally from Bridgeport, Connecticut, Mariah joined her church choir at just 11 years old, and her first acting role would come in high school when she was cast in a school production of Footloose. It was then that she realized that theater was something that she wanted to do for the rest of her life. Mariah is a graduate of Itasca College's musical theater program and works there as a teacher when she's not on stage. Mariah has starred in regional productions of stage shows like The Wiz, Ragtime, Hairspray, Spring Awakening, and Hair. But her breakout role came in 2019 when she was casted as the lead role of Celie in the national tour of the Tony Award winning Broadway musical The Color Purple. Mariah made quite the lasting impression on audiences and critics alike who couldn't stop gushing over how talented of a performer she is. When COVID hit, Broadway shut down, and many of its actors were left jobless and waiting along with the rest of the world. However, with the introduction of vaccinations, many are excited to get back to life as they knew it before the pandemic hit, and that includes Broadway, which is scheduled to reopen in September 2021. With Mariah being signed to one of the most impressive agencies in America, the Daniel Hoff Agency, combined with her natural talent and drive, it won't be long before Mariah is back to starring in incredible productions and we see her name in lights on the Broadway stage. Please welcome Mariah Lyttle to the hot seat. Thank you so much, Mariah, for being here in the hot seat today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and jump right into it. My first question for you is you are an incredibly talented actress and singer, and a lot of that seems to come very naturally to you. So, at what age did you start acting and singing?
I started singing first. I started singing in the church choir at age 10. And I thought I was pretty fancy because you had to be 13 to join the choir. But my pastor really saw something in me. I started singing in the church choir at that age, but I'd been singing for years before. So that's where it all started. It started in church, and then I went to performing arts high school when I was 13. And I did musical theater there. And then I went to Ithaca College, got my degree, and then started working professionally after that. So
Wow. You know, actually, that goes into my second question. I was going to say, I read that you fell in love with acting when you did a school production of Footloose. What was that experience like, and what role did you play?
I call it the happy accident because I didn't know a thing about musical theater other than I loved Dreamgirls. And that was only because I loved Beyonce. So that's where that started. So in Footloose, I was in the ensemble, and I started off in that school as a vocal performance major. Well, I was a musical theater major, but I started in a vocal performance class, and I auditioned for the musical just like out of no, just because it was there and it was happening or whatever, and I got in. And I loved it. And that's why I call it a happy accident, because I really wasn't intending on doing musical theater, but now it's something that I can't not do.
One of the biggest barriers to becoming a professional actor, a lot of people know, whether it be film or television or the stage, is getting an agent. How did you go about landing an agent, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I consider myself to be very blessed. At the end of college, at the end of our senior year, and this is for every performance class, performance school, excuse me, we have this thing called Showcase. class. And if COVID wasn't a thing, what would happen is that you would go to New York or wherever the big like performance hub, whether that's Chicago or whatever, and you will do a showcase with your class in front of a bunch of agents. And if people are interested in you, they'll set up a bunch of meetings, and then you can, go shop around from agent to agent to see which one fits your needs the best. So that's what I did. I was very blessed, like I said, to get 14, I believe, responses,
Wow.
which is pretty incredible for a college senior. So I had 14 responses, and I ended up with an agent about a month after that. So that was
Oh,
my
wow.
process.
That's interesting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In 2018, you starred as Celie in the national North American touring production of the legendary Broadway musical, The Color Purple. A lot of aspiring Black actresses would call that a dream role. What was it like to portray such an iconic character? And did you feel the pressure to take on such a complex character?
Yes. The answer is yes. So this was the last role that I was in prior to COVID.
Okay.
And it was the second professional production. So I graduated in 2019. And then the day after that, I did The Wiz in Virginia. And then a month after that, I started rehearsals for The Color Purple.
Wow.
So I was like on this high, I guess, like on this performance high, because I was just working and working and working. And it wasn't like I was like in this like fairy tale land, but I was just like so driven to keep working.
Right.
So I had that kind of mentality when I came in. But I was 21 when I started the tour. I was very much, obsessed with the idea of traveling and traveling for work, being able to do what I love on the road and still be able to see all these sites. So it was hard to maintain focus in that aspect. It wasn't impossible because I had to do it. I was getting paid to do it.
Right.
Job. But that I think was one of the biggest struggles for me. And then filling the shoes of so many people before me, like Cynthia Erivo, Fantasia, LaShawne's, all these big name people, was incredible. At first, it was incredibly daunting because I felt like if I did anything wrong, I would be failing them. And I would be failing the people because they were expecting me to hit that high G and I'm here like Cynthia did, or you know what I mean? All these things that they have seen many times. But I had to stop and think and talk to myself and talk to one of my old acting teachers. During our break, I went back to visit my school, and she said that you have to put yourself into the show as much as you can. Not what you heard from Cynthia, not what you heard from LaShawne's. What can you bring to this role that illuminates who you are as an actress? What can you bring that's different? What makes Celie your own? And I as much as I've probably heard that in the past, I think I needed to be reassured of that in that moment. So it was Celie, but it was Celie with a little bit of a twist, and it was the twist that I was able to provide, and it didn't take away from the story or anything. It just put my mark or my stamp on it. So after that talk, it was more reassuring for me to continue on.
I hear a lot of actors say that they're going to bring an element of their own to the character, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
The Color Purple, of course, began as a novel written by Alice Walker and went on to be made into the highly celebrated film starring Oprah Winfrey, and later, of course, the stage musical. What is your favorite reincarnation of The Color Purple, the novel, the movie, or the musical?
I think I'm going to say the musical.
Yeah.
I just have such a connection with music in general. So to be able to tell the same story, first of all, I love when things are changed from books to movies to musicals or whatever order, because it just shows you the value of art. The same story can be told in so many different ways, and you will never lose the essence of the story. But when you add music to it, it just takes it to a whole nother level. And I think the same can be applied when you take it from book to film. When you add a visual to it, it takes it to another level. Now you have visuals, you have costumes, you have lights, you have music, you have all these elements that bring it to life. That's really why I love the musical the best, because it just breathes a new kind of air and brings a new kind of life into the characters that you might not have gotten from the movie or from the book. They always say that when you sing in a musical, you're at the point where words are not enough, so you have to go into song. So I always take that with me, whatever show I do, but specifically for this one.
What was your favorite song to perform in the Color Purple musical?
There's so many, but Miss Celie's Pants was definitely the number one. It was one of the only like upbeat songs that Celie got to sing, and it really showed her maturation, not just in age, but just mindset and mentality, and how she's grown from 14 to at that time, she was probably about 40, 45, because she gets to be 50 by the end of the show.
During the national tour, I can imagine that it can get very tiring being in so many cities so often. How did you stay focused while on tour in so many amazing cities? And what was your favorite city to perform in and why?
Knowing that there were going to be new people in the audience every night or almost every night, um, is one of the things that kept me going. And that's another, I don't know if you're going to ask this in a little bit, but it's one of the things that kept the show fresh as well. Because, you know, after a while, doing the same thing over and over again can be very just draining. Mm-hmm. Because we were on a non-equity tour, we had a lot of one-nighters, meaning that we got to a location, performed, and then left the next morning. We had a lot of those. So we didn't really have a lot of time to explore. But there were times that we did. And one of my favorite places was New Orleans, our opening weekend. It was incredible. We spent a whole week there. And I like to travel, but I haven't traveled before. Right. So being able to do that and it still work was just a blessing. But yeah, New Orleans, I mean, like Bourbon Street, it was just so many things that were so pleasing to the eye just to like sit and be around. Like, it was just incredible. And Tennessee is another one. I forget exactly where. I believe it was Knoxville. Yeah, I just loved it. I really did.
Those are two places that I hear have incredible food as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
You've gone viral a few times on Instagram for your incredible singing voice. That's actually how I discovered you. One I remember in particular is when you went viral for singing "Don't Rain on My Parade" from Funny Girl. Do you find that you're gaining more recognition from your acting jobs and singing? And do you enjoy the notoriety that comes with being a talented entertainer?
Yeah, you know, I love to share my art in whatever way that comes about, whether that's on the stage, on TikTok, on Instagram, whatever have you. But I think something that I've recognized rather recently is how much work it takes to put yourself out there on social media and then to meet everyone's expectations. I think that is like the only downfall of, you know, this generation being so active with the phones and things of that nature, is that we kind of lose ourselves in trying to please a crowd that has never seen us face to face. You know, we kind of give them an image of who we are to the Instagram grid or to the feed that they see, right? But they don't really know who we are in our individual lives. And, you know, some people are better at showing that online than others. But I just, you know, it's hard to meet everyone's expectations because you're never going to make everybody happy. And that's just, it is what it is. And I'm kind of a people pleaser, which is why it's so hard for me to accept or find acceptance online. So I just do what I do. You know, I just sing my songs. I sing what the heart is telling me to sing, and whatever comes from that is what comes from that. And you know, I keep it pushing and keep doing, keep creating. So
the stage diva is well documented, with some even saying that it is a badge of honor to be called a diva in the world of theater. But many people find diva-like behavior to be problematic and damaging to someone's reputation. Do you think that in the world of theater, it is still an honor to be called a diva?
I need to choose my words very wisely. I think that the definition of diva is just one that will always be up in the air. I think that the way that we describe a diva now is, you know, kind of to be problematic and very demanding and things of that nature. I don't think there's a place for that personally, in any show, in any role. I, before the pandemic, played 2 back-to-back lead roles and have never had a situation where I had to claim my role to get what I want, or, you know, say, well, I'm Celie, so I deserve this, and this. Like, I think just being a good-natured person will get you the things that you want. And I'm not saying that you need to take whatever is given to you. Like, if there's a problem, speak up for sure. But like, I think the reality is that you're never going to have every single thing that you want as a performer, just because circumstances are different in every type of show, every location that you're in. You know, you just have to be malleable. And I think that if I were to define diva, I think it's someone who is very sure of themselves, and that simplifies it to the idea that you don't have to be problematic. You just need to be, you know, assured in what you want and how you will get it. I think that's where the problems lie, is how you get what you want. And that's what gives people a negative connotation of the word diva. And I think it's time for that to change.
I agree. I totally agree. I know that a lot of actors are firmly film or stage, and they say that the experiences of those two acting worlds are totally different. With one, of course, being recorded and one being live performance. Would you ever do film, or does your passion lie strictly in the stage?
Oh, I would do it all. I found, especially with COVID, now that um, musical theater is great, but it's not the only thing that I can do. And I limited myself for such a long time to the point now where I can't do theater at all. Um, I have to find another way to have this creative outlet. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with TV and film. It is a feat. It's challenging, but it's not impossible. You know, there are a lot of different elements, and it's not just recording, but it's, you know, the way that you're facing when you talk to somebody on camera, and the way that you like make movements and how small they have to be in order to be picked up. Like, you're scaling everything down from being on stage to being on film or television. And I think that's one of my biggest problems, and or not problems, but biggest, like, you know, obstacles, I guess, to overcome when making the transition. But I would do it in a heartbeat. I'm doing it. I'm trying anyways.
You've also starred in regional tours of The Wiz, Hairspray, Ragtime, and Spring Awakening. What has been your favorite acting job outside of The Color Purple, and why?
I think that The Wiz would be my next favorite after Color Purple for sure. But specifically because I got to be a normal young girl, considering the circumstances, right?
Right.
And I say that to say all of the other roles that I had, Sarah in Ragtime, Celie in The Color Purple, although they are such great roles, they are incredibly draining to the soul because of the nature of the context. And while it's a beautiful show, while the score is gorgeous, while the text is incredible, I got to be, you know, a kid.
Right.
I got to, you know, I didn't have to be a downtrodden mother who loses her child in both cases, right? In Ragtime and in Color Purple, you know what I mean? I could put that aside, acknowledge it for what it's worth, but also be able to be a 14, 15-year-old girl who loses her dog
Right.
and finds all these fictional characters and still has such a rich story at the end of the day. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic for another conversation. But yeah, that's my favorite role.
In 2020, this awakening happened within media and the arts, as it did with many different aspects of life. And it was acknowledged that there is not enough people of color on Broadway or in the media in general. When it comes to the stage, I've heard people say that the stage lacks people of color because of the historical aspect to many of the top grossing plays and musicals, which is why many star white actors. But recently, shows like Bridgerton and huge musicals like Hamilton erased that narrative and have used colorblind casting. So, my question is, do you think that we need more colorblind castings, or do we need more plays written for people of color? Or do we just need a mix of the two?
I would say a mix of the two. And here's why. I'll make this as short as possible. I had a conversation with a friend on the topic of diversity. So while I'm not performing, I'm a teacher, and I was, you know, doing an application for another job, and I had to do an equity, diversity, and inclusion statement. And she was like, "Well, I don't really understand the term diversity." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Well, why are we patting ourselves on the back for being diverse when we should have always just been including everybody from the jump?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Wow, you're right." And it stuck with me because theater, though I know that theater started in a certain place, and not saying that it was right where it started, but it should have never been, you know, catered to just one group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And because that ethic, I guess, has been carried on for so long, it's very hard for people to break out of it. Um, there's nothing wrong with people of color on stage. So why aren't they on stage? People of color are very talented. Why are they not on stage? And then when they are on stage, why are they telling the same stories over and over again? And I think that's kind of my like plight with shows for people of color, because yes, we're being able to tell our stories, but how many times do we have to tell the same story for you to understand what we're going through? Let us just fall in love. Let us just lose our dog and get swept away in a tornado and find all these fictional characters. Like, let us just be human. Let us embrace that aspect of our lives, because while it might be interesting and it might it might make people of a certain race cry and, you know, find the story so beautiful. It's incredibly traumatizing to live that story over and over again for some people. We have to take in account of that side of the story, you know, like Ragtime. Well, like I said before, the story is beautiful, the music is beautiful. Singing Your Daddy's Son over and over again. I don't have children, but just imagining being a mother who buried their child because they didn't know how to care for them, and they thought that the man that they loved, or they thought that the man that left them was the one that they loved, so they didn't know what to do. That is hard.
Yeah.
But like My Fair Lady, like I get to dance around and kick my face and fall in love. Like, why can't I just be in that? Like, why can't I do that? You know what I mean? So I think it's less about making more art for Black people and just include, or people of color, but just including them in the works that we already have. Because the stories that we have are fine.
Right.
You know, and again, it's both, but it's more so the former than it is the latter.
I'm a writer. I write young adult fiction, so I really understand it. And I know that people nowadays are even saying we're sick of, for Black people particularly, we're sick of the trauma, you know, that everything we have is like trauma, slavery, you know, things like that, and or gang banging and things like that. And we want to see ourselves in, you know, stories, just regular fun stories. You know, one of my favorite movies and musicals as well is Legally Blonde. And I always say, wouldn't it be so awesome if we could put a like Black girl starring in Legally Blonde, or if we could do something fun? Yes, something fun like that. All you need is a blonde wig. It's not called Legally White Woman Blonde. It's called Legally Blonde.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. Also, if anyone's watching this and you're casting Legally Blonde, I got this wig for another like few months before it goes. So just say the word.
Is it true that outside of acting, your passions include knitting, sewing, and crocheting?
Unfortunately, yes. I'm such a grandma. I love to crochet. I make scarves and hats and stuff. Knitting, I'm not that great at. I picked it up during a scene that I had to do in college, but I do like to, like, you know, try. I'm not that good at sewing, so sewing isn't that accurate. But also like Netflix, I like to take adventures now that, you know, I've realized the importance of being outside now that we've been locked away for a year. I really like to just take drives and just appreciate nature and, you know, sit and write. And like I've picked up writing recently, like poems, music, something that I always wanted to do, but just never had like the drive or the impetus to do it. So yeah, my legs have expanded a little bit. So
before the pandemic hit, I was in Los Angeles. So that's where I was meeting. That was the first time I met like professional actors and things of that nature. But a lot of them said they didn't like the industry, I guess to say, the industry of Los Angeles, the industry of acting out there, and that they were going to go back to the East Coast because of that.
Really? I've heard so many mixed things. I've heard that, and I've also heard the opposite. I've heard people leaving. I mean, right now there's such an uproar within the Broadway community with so many allegations coming to light and so many things that, you know, were swept under the rug for far too long that are now coming out. And it's shaking up the community. And I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, Broadway is not for me right now, and I don't know if it ever will be again. Just because we've been able to come to terms with what it really is and what it's rooted in. So I've seen people make the change from Broadway to television and film, but I've also heard the opposite as well. So it's a lot. It really is a lot.
I think what you just said was really interesting. I mean, I'm not an actress, so I don't know this for sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there probably are more roles for actors of color on screen and television right now, just because of everything that's happening and the change that has happened. And people are like, oh no, we need more actors of color.
Yeah. As far as I know, as far as I can see with what I know, yeah, I would have to agree. It's a shame because there's so many talented Black people on stage. They're just not in these leading roles that they have every right to be in, you know. So
I think like Lin-Manuel Miranda did. I know he's an extreme example, but I think there needs to be more Black writers, more people of color writing these stories,
right,
directing these stories, because that's where the problem really lies. There's
yeah.
not enough to give roles to these people of color.
And that's what makes the difference. We talk about telling our story. A lot of the stories that are about us are written by white people. So there's not a lot of truth to it. It's just that, oh, she's sad and she's downtrodden. Let's make it a story. Like, you know what I mean? There's not a lot of truth, and there's not the entire essence of being Black that you would get if you had somebody who was Black behind the table, whether that's the director, whether that's the writer, whether that's the choreographer. All these things are important. So yeah.
Very true. Um, what did you think of Hamilton? Because I know a lot of people, white audiences at first, before it became this phenomenon, I remember when I first started hearing about it, were not feeling the fact that there were people of color in those roles. And Lin-Manuel Miranda would constantly have to defend himself and be like, these are the people suited best for these singing voices. And then we have to remember an element of nothing on stage is real. So why is this such a big deal that these actors are playing people from the past, but they're, oh goodness, they're people of color,
Right. Yeah. That's a very, very good question. And I've heard a lot of uproar about Hamilton in general concerning that. I think that Hamilton was what we needed for the time, and still is, because it's still a very hot commodity, because it gives the opportunity to people of color in general, right? Because it's not just Black people that have these leading roles, but to people of color across the board. And I think that's amazing, because it's one of the few shows, I think, like Great Comet was like another example, but besides those two, that's about it. So while, yeah, we're kind of rewriting history and, for the stage, I don't think anybody needs to be upset about it, because it's not detrimental. We're not changing history.
Exactly.
We are retelling history in a way that is appropriate for the time right now. And I think I'm sure statistics can prove that a lot of high schoolers probably got better grades on their A-push exam because of Hamilton, Exactly. I mean, I think I think Lin-Manuel Miranda was very, very smart. In general, but doing a show like that in the way that he did it, it just illuminates the minds of so many people, creative or not. And that's what we have to look at. So I think people miss the bigger picture when they're very fine-tuned to, well, George Washington was white and he's played by a Black man. Mm-hmm. The story is still the same. You know what I mean? So
a lot of people say that the theater is inaccessible to a lot of people, especially people of color, and a lot of people's first experiences with theater, to even be able to see it, is in high school when they go to their productions, or in college when you go see a production. I saw a production of Rent in college, but or when they get adapted to the screen. How do you think Broadway can make itself more accessible to a broader audience?
I think once we acknowledge that, going back to the topic of diversity, once we acknowledge that diversity is more than just race, but it's age, it's finance, it's disability or lack there, you know what I mean? All of those things are incorporated in diversity. So, and it's not just about performance, but like making theaters wheelchair accessible, making student matinees a whole heck of a lot cheaper than they normally are, things of that nature, to make it more accessible for people who, it goes beyond race is what I'm saying. And I think little things like that, or not little, but things like that in general, really make it more accessible for kids, adults. You don't have to be 20 to start your acting career. And I wish somebody told me that when I was in college, because I was just very hell-bent on graduating, working. There's a TikTok that's like, bus, another club, another club. And I was like, job, another job, regional job, national tour, Broadway. That's what my plan was. Because I wanted to be settled and done by 45 and have a family, sit down with two dogs in a penthouse in New York. That was my dream. But I watch a lot of shows and things where people are like in their early 30s, just starting out in acting, in their early 40s, in their 50s, acting for the first time. Why limit us like that? You know what I mean? Why create this narrative that you can only be successful when you're young, and when you're old, it's too late? And I think that's what sets a divide between generations too. Another conversation for another day. But just changing the mindset of theater as a whole right now will definitely make it more accessible in more ways than one.
That's a great answer. Actually, I was going to say, when you said the age thing, every time I think of that, I think of Meghan Markle. She did not get on Suits until she was in her early 30s. Yeah. She didn't meet Prince Harry. She went through a divorce and then met him, a freaking prince, at like 36, had her first kid at like 38, and is having her second right now at 40. So it's never too late.
Life is not linear. That's something I had to learn.
Is there anything else that you would like to say?
Just thank you for the opportunity to share this platform with you. I'm always thrilled to talk about theater and what needs to change, what doesn't need to change. I like to talk about my life too, but like the conversations that need to be had, we're having. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you're in here. Thank you so much for being in the hot seat. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm glad to talk to you.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.